listening to Late Night Radio on the SHR Media Network. Caution, there will be mature themes explored and potentially adult language used. If conservatarian words, phrases, certain concepts, or rhetoric offends you, tune out now.
Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody? Julie, hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on, I know you can hear me. Mike. What day is it, Mike?
Tomo, you magnificent bastard, I read your book.
I drink your milkshake.
How dare you?
I call that bold talk for a one-eyed fat man.
Fill your hand, you son of a bitch!
Captain.
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 Captain. Captain.
No, not yet. Don't pass out on me yet.
Terrain. Pull up.
I would remind you that extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. And let me remind you also that moderation in the pursuit of justice is no virtue.
Of course you realize this means war.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, welcome to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show, where I am broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, spelled with a K, a mere 2 miles east of the locus of evil, on the entire left coast, the Bill Mill, the belly of the beast, the Capitol building in downtown Sacramento, at 10th and L Streets, where late at night you can hear the death of common sense and its concomitant wail as it wafts from that petrifying edifice. And again, late at night, when I exit the plush, resplendent, sumptuous, palatial, and effulgently bulbous SHR Media Studios, I'll be smelling the odoriferous stench of sulfur, brimstone, and evil emanating from that mentally destitute columned structure aforementioned. It is 2020, boys and girls. The time is nigh. The epic is now. The leftist madness is afoot, and the criticality is imperative. There is no law, rule, tradition, fact, history, logic, rationality, proportion, context, intent, no tradition, no bit of normality the Democrats, leftists, and American media maggots won't break, kill, slice, mutilate, bury, eliminate, ignore, butcher, threaten, explode, incinerate, throttle, or expunge in order to wrest the reins of power and keep America subjugated in perpetuity for unicorns and fairy farts. Make no mistake, 2020 isn't truly about Democrats or Republicans. It's instead about the fight against socialism and ultimately communism. Systems responsible for the deaths of, at least 100 million in just the last 100 years, but who's counting? We stand to lose this country not from without, but from within, to the keening and purposely cultivated and by that of the masses. No less than our U.S. Constitution and its Bill of Rights, and our very freedoms and liberties are at stake. And I'm not going to stand by and watch this nation devolve and its values, mores, and morals be cavalierly subsumed by those with no interest in her success. Make no mistake, this nation is at a tipping point, because when we fail, the rest of the world follows suit. When freedom and liberty can no longer be found in the United States, what nation exists to step up? Jack Alexander, welcome. How are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you, BZ? I hope you had a great Christmas and New Year.
I had a great Christmas. It was very quiet, which is how I like it these days. We are a generally quiet household. We live within our means. And the new year, I made some resolutions. I didn't make any personal. Well, let me start back just a little bit. I promoted this show tonight on a bunch of groups that are involved with firearms. And one of the reasons that I did that tonight is Jack told us a tale last year, because Jack, obviously, this is Jack Alexander. He's in Australia. Has a tale to tell about firearms confiscation in Australia itself. And since it's 2020, and I'm constantly getting new people listening to the show, what I wanted to do is have Jack tell us again about two very important things that are occurring right now in Australia tonight. And however long it takes, that's however long it takes. But for the new folks that are here that have never been here before, I am a conservative. I'm a little L libertarian. And Jack, can you give folks a little bit of a background as to who you are? Also, your radio show. You have your own radio show, and you have your own website, jackalexanderexperiment.com. So give people a little sense of who you are, if you would, please, to start.
Well, yeah, I served 10 years in the Australian military. I saw numerous deployments to certain shitholes around the world, serving alongside the fine young men and women of the U.S. military, many of those of which to this day, I still consider friends and allies. But I got into broadcasting as I was getting out of the military. And because I had a warped sense of humor, and I was involved with a breakfast radio show at the time, and let's just say the guy I was working with was sort of like the Australian version of Howard Stern, but with a better sense of humor.
Oh, better is good. Okay.
We pushed the limits. I mean, we did a lot of musical parodies. We did a lot of jokes that pushed the line. We even got away with doing the Fakawi tribe joke on radio, which is a good one. So yes, we have managed to. Well, we didn't drop the F word. We dropped the PH word. If you get my meaning.
Right. Big difference. I grant you.
Well, yeah. We went through and we passed it by the station censor before we did this gag on air, so it had been written off because licensed broadcasters in Australia have someone that is essentially licensed by the government to act as a censor.
There in the studio.
And that they are within management, within the various broadcasting studios, and if you think something might be a little bit, might delve into politics in a way that might cross the sedition in media laws that are in Australia, or the racial vilification laws that affect broadcasters in Australia, you sort of take your copy to them and they sign off on it. Same with, certain words that the Australian Communications Authority, like the FCC, would not like you to say on air. But, if you get it past, if you can sneak it through phonetically, the shit tends to fall on them first before it falls on us. So like when we did the joke, we're trudging through the forest, we came across these little pygmies. They stood up on the rock and went, "Where the fuck are we?" And because we'd had the censor pass it, of course, we got called into the station manager's office.
No.
You can't go around dropping the F-bomb. Look, here is the copy signed off by the censor. And it's like, oh, shit.
Damn it, Jim.
But that's the sort of thing. But I've been trying to immigrate to the United States for a long time because Australia is lost. It has become an eco-terrorist and socialist wet dream. We now, not that we ever had the right to firearms. It was a privilege. And, well, technically it still is a privilege. And we fought. I mean, there are a lot of people that we had a couple of big mass shootings in Australia. There was the Hoddle Street Massacre in Melbourne. A guy shot up a train station and murdered a few people. There was the Telstra building incident in Melbourne as well. Telstra was the phone. So somebody went postal on the phone company in there. How he got past security, nobody ever knows because it was a secured building. And then the big one was the Port Arthur massacre.
Yep, Port Arthur.
And the big controversy on all of that, after these first two big shooting incidences that happened in Melbourne, the state of Victoria said, okay, law-abiding citizens are not law-abiding and can't be trusted with semi-automatic weapons and high-capacity magazines. So they enacted a law where basically you turn them in, or you face criminal convictions. But then what the government did was to pack up all of those guns that were surrendered by law-abiding citizens in the state of Victoria, loaded them up into a couple of trucks, and took them over to Adelaide, the capital of South Australia, the next state over.
Okay.
And sold them at a gun show. Now, these are firearms that were voluntary, that were handed in because people trying to obey the new law, and the government turned around and said, we can make a quick buck out of this. And some of the weapons that were turned in were then bought by Martin Bryant, who then hopped on a flight, went back to Tasmania and committed those crimes. And, that at that point, when they turned around and state governments tried to hold out, and the federal government turned around and said, if you do not adopt these laws, then we are going to withhold all federal funding to the states until you comply.
So let me see if I get this straight. It was from a gun, essentially a gun confiscation, that the guy who committed a mass murder, that's how he got his gun. So basically, he got his gun from the government, who, if they hadn't screwed around with firearms, would not essentially have been able to provide that guy with his gun. Do I have that right?
Oh, he would have purchased the firearms regardless.
Okay.
But what came out in the wash of all of this was that, which is why they then the federal government then sort of went, okay, we can't even trust state governments when it comes to gun laws, because of what the state of Victoria did. Okay, we'll take all your semi-automatics. I think you're allowed. I think the only semi-automatics that were allowed after that were 22s with a maximum 10-round magazine. So your Ruger 10-22 with your 10-round helical magazine and your Mossberg 22 semi-autos, they were fine. But if it was centerfire, you were screwed. And you were limited to pump-action shotguns. You couldn't have semi-automatic shotguns anymore. So they packed all of those up, and they went interstate. And when it came out that the state government had been doing this for over a decade, whenever somebody died who was a gun collector, and the family said, "Oh, look, we don't like guns. We don't know what to do with them," and surrendered them to the government, which is their right. The government said, "Okay, fine," and they took them interstate and sold them, and they had been making a killing out of this. So after the Port Arthur thing happened and this little secret came out, the government said, well, this time we have a gun confiscation. The gun owner will stand there and witness the firearms being cut in half with a drop saw or destroyed in some, rendered inert in some way. And at the end of it, you signed a document that you witnessed the rendering ineffective of these firearms. And then you got paid less than 10% of their value in restitution. That was probably the only positive thing out of that. was that there was some level of restitution, but even then you got screwed. Because when the government said, the federal government said, we will pay restitution at a fair price, at market value. Then they redefined market value as scrap value, because when they started realizing, oh shit, how much this is going to cost the taxpayer. And, so it went from, I got less than 10% of the insured value of my firearms. When I finally got driven to the point of almost bankruptcy trying to fight this. And, it was legalized, government sanctioned theft on so many levels.
Yes, of private property. That's your property.
And at that point I thought, hey, I put on a uniform and swore to defend this country. And, not only have you messed me over with and deserted me over my health care, but you then turn around and you deprive the people and just screw over the people in such a way. And we are no safer in Australia because of this. I mean, before the gun ban in '96, police only wore body armor that was stab resistant. I was at the local IGA supermarket a couple hours ago, and two of the local police officers came in. They are now dressed with full body armor with trauma plates front, back, and side. They've gone from 38 caliber revolvers to Smith & Wesson M&Ps with a 15-round magazine and 4 spare magazines. I mean, prior to the gun ban, they were allowed the revolver and 2
speed loaders.
So they only had 18 rounds prior to the gun ban. Now, what's that? 30? That's 45 rounds they're now carrying, plus a 1 liter fire extinguisher size canister of pepper spray.
Well, I guess because why wouldn't you? So essentially what you're saying is the state laws of all the states in the territories in Australia, they were not congruent. They were all not together. So the federal government decided that they were going to step in. And then wasn't it 1996 where they conjured up the National Firearms Agreement? I like that because it's so much nicer than, the National Firearms Confiscation Act. But it's a National Firearms Agreement in which they bought back and you voluntarily surrendered. And there were gun amnesties. But I remember looking at some in the process of researching this tonight. And I can't put them on the air because I don't have the visual ability here to do that on the video. But there were ads that I watched that I saw in black and white that were saying something similar to, you're going to become a felon unless you turn in your shotgun and do it right now. And
it wasn't just that. It wasn't just those ads that were running. I was having them every other day because I was trying to fight this in court. I was having the local state police turning up, knocking on my door, actually intimidating me, saying, if you haven't surrendered these weapons by this time, we are going to be back here and we are going to arrest your ass. And we are going to drag you out in front of your wife and your young child. My eldest boy was born shortly during this period as well, and we'll drag you out in front of your neighbours, in front of your wife, and perp walk you down, dragging, kicking, and screaming. And we might even have a crack at look at arresting your wife for being complicit in all of this.
Correct me if I'm wrong. The state of the art right now in Australia is that you have to have a firearms license to possess or use a firearm. License
You
holders.
have to have a license for a long time, yeah.
License holders have to demonstrate I think I'm reading here, a quote, a genuine reason for holding a firearms license, which does not include self-defense. Self-defense is not a reason for the possession of a firearms license, and you can't be some kind of a prohibited person. All the firearms got to be registered by serial number to the owner, and also has to have a firearms license. So,
Yep.
The interesting point that I find about that is...
There's something else. There's something else there that probably isn't on there.
Okay, can I stop you just for a second? Something just happened, folks. I'm looking at the clock. It's 8:20, 20. This will never happen again. It's, if you write it sort of in Julian time, it's 2020, 2020. Okay, that just went by. Okay, don't you feel different? I feel better. I feel unique. Just wanted to point that out. Sorry to interrupt you, Jack.
Yeah, numerologist wet dream.
Yeah, pretty much. All the Chinese in Sacramento right now are going, what? I'm sorry, Jack, go ahead.
The one thing that never gets covered by the media in that is that to have a firearms license, part of the conditions of that in the fine print is that you have to surrender your right to refuse police entry to your home at any time of day without a warrant.
Those are just like the conditions of probation and parole in the United States if you're a criminal. If you've been convicted of a crime in the United States, I can speak only for California, spell it with a K, but if you're a convicted felon, for example, you're subject to being placed on parole or probation, and you're subject to having your property looked at, seized, etc., and wherever it is that you live, entrance can be made, and that can be searched at any time. So in Australia, good to know you're a convicted person, and that's how they treat you, with a license.
Yeah. And they made it very clear when the fine print of this started to come out. And of course, a lot of the fine print of the National Firearms Agreement was very much, put it this way, Nancy Pelosi could have been involved with this because a lot of it didn't become public knowledge until after it had been voted into law. And that was one of them, and it caught a lot of people up. Because under the way they worded the law, even a Daisy Red Ryder pellet gun under Australian law is considered a firearm because it uses a spring action to propel the projectile. They tried to incorporate everything as a firearm they could. So you can't have a pellet gun without a license. You can't play around with rail guns like I used to do before the law and so on. I used to enjoy building small rail guns and using BB pellets to fire out of that, just for a bit of fun in the garage. Compressed air-powered spear guns are not allowed. If you've still got the old-fashioned rubber band style, they're still fine.
Okay, good.
But a crossbow, on the other hand.
No.
Is a no. They just didn't limit it to the explosive reaction of a pyrotechnic compound. They tried to group as much of it in as possible. And, people got caught up in this. Now, I'll give you two incidences. One of these is the brother of a friend of mine who's now a state senator in the state of Victoria.
All right.
But her brother's no longer eligible because of this complete clusterfuck. He ran one of the state's biggest paintball operations. The law comes in and he's looked at the fine print and seen compressed air. So he has gone to the district's firearms officer of Victoria Police to get clarification. It's like you're talking about firearms. I've been running essentially an amusement park here where people run around, shooting paintballs at each other. How is this going to affect my business? He had 380 of these paintball guns. And at the time, even now, for the few paintball operators that are still there, they're allowed to own the weapons with government approval. But, when this came around, so he got a letter from someone at the Victoria Police, to get clarification. Oh no, this shouldn't affect your business. That's not a firearm. That's an entertainment thing. That's like the compressed air BB pellet guns at the county fair. They're controlled. Not 2 weeks later, he has the special the special response group, basically Victoria Police's version of SWAT, raiding his business, and
Jesus.
He is up on more than 300 individual felony counts of possession of unlicensed firearms.
Oh, they're going to bury him under the prison.
And had his sister not been heavily involved with politics, he probably would have been, because either way, he still wound up a convicted felon. But only, the judge came around and said, look, I have to convict you. There is no leeway in here. Yes, you have taken reasonable steps to get clarification, but you are still in possession of unregistered firearms. But the judge at least turned around and made it into one low-grade felony, and rather than 300 and something odd individual felonies. But again, it's still a felony conviction, which should not have happened. Then we have the incidents of my neighbor who had a couple of bolt-action rifles that weren't caught up in this whole thing. He had a single shot 22 bolt action rifle that belonged to his great grandfather. It had been passed down, through the family to him. He was his parents' only child, and ended with him. And a .308 rifle that he used to go deer hunting. Now, there are certain introduced species of deer into Australia that are heavily controlled.
Okay.
There is a lottery to get the tags to shoot this particular species of. I forget which species it is, but he is given a particular weekend, and if he does not bag a deer on that weekend, he is not allowed to enter that competition for another period of time. And he's there at 4 o'clock in the morning, cleaning his .308 rifle, which he had locked up. And, he had it stored. He hadn't brought it out in nearly a year, so he was cleaning all the storage, oil and stuff out of it. And he's a knock on the door. And, okay, that's a little bit strange, but there was two old in the apartments above him. There was a couple of elderly people that lived there. Maybe one of them was not feeling well and needed assistance, so he answers the door. It's the police. They're coming at 4 o'clock in the morning to do a firearms inspection.
Of course.
To check that his firearms are stored accordingly. And, he's gone up to the door, who is it? And they go, Victoria Police, firearms inspection. Now, if he would have turned around and said, hold on a second, just let me secure my weapon that I was cleaning, they would have burst through, the police would have known instantly that there was a firearm in that room, and what would have happened? They would have burst through, guns drawn, and there would probably be a dead person on the ground. But no, he's opened the door, and they did him on some of this fine print. Even though he had a tag issued by the state government that he would be hunting that weekend, and it was a 3-hour drive from his location, from his apartment to where he was planning on hunting that weekend. So he had a valid reason for having that firearm out of the gun safe. But because of the way the law was written, the gun was outside of the gun safe, was unsecured at the time of the visit of the inspection. They did him. So again, felony conviction, and he lost his grandfather's heirloom .22 bolt-action rifle.
Okay, we got to take a break. We're talking to Jack Alexander. He's in Oz right now. That's only 8,403 miles away from Sacramento, give or take a quarter inch or so. Tonight we're going to have Jack talk about firearms, the confiscation, the National Firearms Agreement of 1996. Then we're going to get into the wildfires that are in Australia. It's probably not exactly what you think they are right now. Then we're going to get into politics. It's going to be a great time. I'm glad you're here tonight. Welcome to Simone in chat, Mike in chat, Jack is in chat himself, Dave the Alaskan, Kaiser, and one viewer. Thank you for being here tonight. We'll be right back after this.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
Hey girls, Carry Girl Gear is here. More and more women every day are concealed carrying, participating in competitive shooting, and getting firearms training. It's not a boys' club anymore, and we don't have to shop in their stores anymore either. Finally, a cool and unique clothing line just for women. Dope tees and hats for the patriotic concealed carry and 2A girl. So what are you waiting for? Go check out carrygirlgear.com today.
Broadcasting behind enemy lines in occupied California, a mere 2 miles from the state capital, the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon radio show can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Pacific and 11 p.m. Eastern. Only on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com to listen. You can also watch on the SHR Media Facebook page and the SHR Media YouTube channel. No goldfish were abused in the making of this ad.
Show on the SHR Media Network, Sackheads Against Tyranny on shrmedia.com. Go there quick like a bunny, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Wednesday, live and direct. on the SHR Media Network. SHRmedia.com. Be there.
Hey, this is Michael Wright.
And I'm Shannon Wright.
Join us for The Right Way with Shannon and Mike, Monday through Thursday from 7 to 9 a.m. right here on SHR Media.
Why are they joining us?
For fun things like sports, politics.
Oh, maybe some news and entertainment?
And all kinds of other things.
Money and recipes and events, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, so join us Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. here on SHRmedia.com.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
And we're back. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tonight, for the entire 2 hours, courtesy of the fabulous Jack Alexander, he's going to be here tonight. I wanted, when I talked to him earlier, I said I'd like to have you on tonight for two very specific reasons. And then after that, we'll go into our standard buttery political goodness. But the two items that I wanted to talk about tonight were specifically firearms, because I went and bigfooted myself onto a bunch of firearms groups today so that they would come in and have and be able to listen to not just a bunch of crap that people on the left have written in terms of articles, but here's an individual, Jack Alexander, who has his own radio show, and you should go to, let's see if I have your thing right here. Okay, you want to find his stuff and his show, jackalexanderexperiment.com, all one word, jackalexanderexperiment.com. So he's got his own radio show. He's had it for a while, lives in Australia, comes to Texas every once in a while, so he's got a wide familiarization with regard to, obviously, Australia and how things are working or not working in Australia, and then in contrast to the United States in terms of how things are now, and then how leftists, Democrats, and the American media maggots want firearms to be considered in the United States. In other words, make no mistake, a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, leftists and Democrats were saying, no, it's not about confiscation. Oh, fuck that. Yes, it is completely about confiscation now. Make no mistake whatsoever, because now, just like Islam, they're telling you what they want. You better listen to them. That's why Jack is here tonight. This is a perfect illustration of a country that's been through all of this. And Jack isn't just some person who, I don't know, was looking at a newspaper in Australia and happened to see this in passing. No, Jack has served in the Australian military, worked with U.S. soldiers, etc., and has seen these things, if you were listening in the first half hour, happen to himself and to his neighbors. He's seen this stuff firsthand. So I want to make everyone understand, number one, Jack, to get a license in Australia almost requires an act of God. Would that be correct?
Yeah, pretty much. The one positive out of the new law when they brought it in was that anyone having a firearm had to do a mandatory gun safety class.
Okay.
Gun safety classes are great, but they made it mandatory. And frankly, I think if you don't do one, you're nutsoed anyway. But that's also then you start to get put on the radar, because those courses are normally run by the police. And you sign in, there is a written exam at the end of these things where you put your name, address, phone number,
right,
driver's license number.
Right.
So now you are on their radar. You may just do the gun safety course and decide and hear all the other legal hurdles you're going to go through and decide, screw it, it's just not worth it. But you are now on the radar. Every time I get pulled up for a speeding ticket, or I get pulled up for a random sobriety check, and they run my license, it's, oh, you used to own firearms. Yeah. Have you got any guns and have you got any anything in the car that we should know about now? I mean, what are you asking? Do I own guns? And they go, well, yeah, that's basically. My answer is usually yes, I own guns, but I'm not stupid enough to keep them in Australia anymore. Which that answer always confuses the hell out of me. Yeah, but I've lost count of the number of times I have been pulled over for some, even just for, when they do a sobriety checkpoint in Australia, there's nothing random about it. They shut down both sides of the interstate and they pull in everyone. The only thing random about it is where on the interstate they hold this thing. And they'll come in, they'll run your registration because we don't have tags that go on the windshield or on the plates anymore. It's all electronic, and so they'll come in, they'll photograph your plate and see whether you're currently registered or not. Heaven help you if you don't. It's an $800 fine.
Wait! Stop! It's an $800 fine if your car isn't registered.
Yeah.
By, I don't know, if you're a month in arrears, 2 months in arrears, it's an $800 fine.
I got caught one night. It got caught up in processing because of online banking. I paid it that afternoon. It was the last day it was valid. I got pulled over that night. And they wrote me up. But I had it, I could actually, I came back home, printed out the receipt, the time, and so on. But I still had to waste a day to go on and print that all out, go into the city, into the government department is known as the Civil Compliance Department.
Of course.
You want an ominous name for a government department? The Department of Civil Compliance.
Folks, I'm going to make a comparison. I'm going to make a comparison right now. I hope that everybody here has seen the movie Brazil. It's by one of the Monty Python members. Terry Gilliam, yes. It is a perfect example of government bureaucracy. And Jack, when you said that name, the first thing I thought of was Brazil. It's a perfect illustration of that in 1984. Let me back up a little bit, though, Jack. The license plates in Australia are tagged with some kind of an electronic device?
No. They are just treated with or when they're made in the prison, and they are actually made by inmates. The coating that's on them makes it easy for them to be picked up by camera. If you have a dirty license plate, or you have one of those covers that obscure the license plate, they will fine you because your tag is not easily viewable.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure.
And unfortunately, they've changed the coding as well, because you used to be able to go out and get a hold of some cheap hairspray like it was Aquanet and just spray over it. The older cameras, they were really easy to trick. You just get out with women's hairspray and put that over it, and to the average eye, if you got pulled up at a sobriety check, it wouldn't ping. But back then, that was before they had the new computerized system with a camera. And they'll just sit at the top of the hill. The guy in an unmarked van will sit at the top of the hill with a camera out there. You think it's a speed camera. No. He's photographing everybody's plates as they go by. And down the hill there is a patrol car, and they will jump out and wave you in, and basically you're nicked, mate. But almost all of the interstates also have every 3 miles a camera, and they take an average of they photograph everyone traveling on there, and then they average your speed out, And if you've traveled, the area of that, if your average speed implies that you might have been speeding, you get a ticket.
Okay, what I'm doing right now, this pause was I'm processing all of this because it's leading somewhere. This is exactly what the leftists would like to do in the United States, in all of the states, and I'm sure they wouldn't mind making this a federal requirement. There's some articles that I found. There's one in National Review, and it said Australia's 96 gun confiscation didn't work, and it wouldn't work in America. And they're talking about the Umpqua Community College in Oregon, and this is back in 2015 when they wrote this. Obama said that America should follow the path of Australia, and he said, we know other countries in response to one mass shooting have been able to craft laws that almost eliminate mass shootings. Friends of ours, allies of ours, Great Britain, Australia, names you by name, countries like ours. So we know there are ways to prevent it. So let me ask you right now, Jack Alexander of jackalexanderexperiment.com, his radio show. After this occurred in 1996, gun crime stopped completely, didn't it?
No. Not only did gun crime not stop, it increased and has continued to increase. Today, if you take out Chicago, Los Angeles, and Detroit out of the shooting statistics, Australia has more gun violence today post the gun ban than it did than what the United States does. If you take out those figures. The black market in illegal firearms is thriving. The religion of peace, the Australian Federal Police a few years back had to finally admit, after a couple of high-profile terrorist attacks with firearms that weren't even manufactured back in 1996. Because up until that point, they were saying, these were all, heirloom guns that were never, they were hidden away and were never registered. And then we had two big incidences in Sydney. We had the Lindt Chocolate Cafe, where a guy used a sawn-off semi-automatic shotgun, which was manufactured like 8 months prior to the shooting when they traced the serial number back. So there's no way that it was 20 years old. And then we had an incident where a New South Wales State Police computer forensic scientist was gunned down in front of state police headquarters by a 16-year-old jihadi with a Gen 4 Glock.
Well, at least he's using good stuff.
But we'll have that argument another day. But the Gen 4 Glocks are only a few years old.
Right. So the big question is,
years old.
where the hell did he get it?
Where did he get it? Well, a few years back, the federal police busted a gun importation ring that was operating between a gun dealer in Austria and several members of, now how do I put this politely, the religion of peace.
Right. Or pieces.
And they were worked out that this jihadic group had imported 20,000 illegal Glocks into the country.
No, I can't. I'm sorry, I can't believe that, because that means that people are disobeying laws. And laws were meant to be obeyed, people. Laws solve everything. If all you have to do is ask a Democrat, and they'll tell you, we need more laws. This makes no sense, Jack.
Here's the kicker in all of this. Now the federal police know that there were 20,000 of these handguns imported through this particular ring. They say some 1,200 of them had been modified to be fully automatic, which is scary enough in their own, because you were never allowed, civilians were never allowed fully automatic weapons. In fact, state law enforcement isn't even allowed fully automatic weapons in this country. which is, frightening enough in itself. So, they had to finally come clean on all of this. That, there are more black market guns available now than ever before. The gun violence rates in Australia are higher than they were prior to the 96 gun ban. We have actually had more mass shootings in the 20 years after than the 150 years leading up to that. Including one mass shooting in a rural town in New South Wales where fully automatic AK-47s were used. They have never in Australia's history been legal in this country. Yet somehow somebody managed to get some Pakistani-made fully automatic AK-47s into the country. Now, admittedly, that wasn't terrorism-related. That was organized crime-related, but it still doesn't, change the narrative that people are going to be, when you create a black market like this, people are going to exploit it. And, with terrorism growing in the country, there is very much an us and them mentality cropping up between the politicians and the people. Because I approached my local House of Representatives member and said, and pointed out this is, all of these terrorist incidences, and said, look, with this, will you now draft legislation that will give law-abiding Australian citizenships the rights and the abilities to access firearms similar to the Second Amendment in the United States? And he said no.
Of course not.
And I said, look, I know that your family is precious to you. Your family is as precious to you as my family is to me. But I also know that this gentleman here, and this gentleman here, all three of them are carrying firearms. They are your minders. They are protecting you and your family at this public event. Does my family not deserve the right to be able to access the same level of protection as yours? And I kid you not, this elected official turned around and said, no, because you are the little people.
Okay, that's an exact quote. That is a quote.
That is a quote from someone who believes in the socialist style of things. He's a member of the Labor Party, which is closely aligned with with socialist and the labor union movement. Power under the people, but most of all, power to me.
Okay, I've wanted to ask you this for about 15 or 20 minutes now, and it seems to me, let's see, we got about 7 more minutes before the top of the hour. After the top of the hour, I want to transition over into the wildfire topic that's going on. But the first question that comes to me is, Australia is similar to the United States in terms of the greater areas of population are on the coasts. However, Australia is a continent in and of itself, a massive continent, the bulk of which I'd say 95%, maybe, the bulk of which is rural or desert.
Yeah.
And so that's not to say people don't live there. They do. But the people in the middle of these areas, aren't they worthy of police response? And my guess would be there are damn few officers available out in these areas. So with a response time, for example, in a rural coastal county where I used to work in the 70s, a response time for a critical incident could be easily a half hour. And in some places, depending on how far up in the mountains I had to go, it could range up to 40 minutes or 45 minutes. Running code 3 in back then a pretty damn fast car. But up until that time, all those people were on their own. In the Texas church, the shooting took 6 seconds and there were no cops around. So the people, the government of Australia is essentially saying, if you're not in a major city, citizens, you're self-defense, screw you. You're on your own. No guns for you.
Oh, look, it doesn't even matter if you're in a major city. I'm just on an hour outside of Melbourne, the second largest city in the country. We have a small police station here in town, which is manned part-time. So when it's closed and the officers are off duty, they come in from other jurisdictions, which, depending on whether they're coming from Seymour, which is about an hour and a half away, or they come from Epping or Greensboro, they're about 45 minutes away, both of them, the other direction. But even if you're within in the city, now, my wife used to work at Safeway as a checkout girl at Safeway.
Okay.
When we were living in one of the suburbs of Melbourne, and we had there was an incident there where somebody had stuck into the staff dressing room and stolen one of the employees' purses. She caught him on the way out, and screamed, and I tackled the guy on the way out. And we're wrestling there. He finally drops the wallet, but I'm not going to let this son of a bitch get away. And management has called the police, and for 45 minutes I wrestled with this guy. I'm not as fit as I used to be when I was in the military. And he's begging his mate that's offside to shank me and all of this other stuff. Wanting to know whether I was a police officer. And I said, no, but I'm not letting you get away, you son of a bitch. And so on. But after 45 minutes of wrestling with this guy, the police still hadn't turned up. The store management finally called back. Oh, we haven't dispatched anyone for that yet. We're holding the guy. He's used violence against a member of the public, and you're not even bothering to send someone to respond. And if that's not bad enough, had they have responded, they probably would have put it down as a petty theft. Because to make the gun control storyline look like it works, police have had to redefine what a violent crime is. Now, I know a woman who was raped by the drug addict across the fence. When they finally caught the guy, but when it got to court, they actually had to argue with the state to get the violent sexual assault put on the docket. They just had it as petty break and enter.
Perfect, because it lowers your stats and it makes you look like you're in control of everything. Nothing to see here.
Yeah, and had the one of the team that was on this case that worked for Victoria Police, had not been a sergeant that had recently moved out of the rape squad, they probably the court may well have let this slide. But I will give the sergeant one thing: she fought tooth and nail for the victim in all of this. Which is what she shouldn't have had to, basically.
Perfect.
But that's the only way they make the numbers work. It's like global warming. If you forget that water vapor is the biggest greenhouse gas, then the numbers might work.
There's a reason that I wanted Jack here tonight. We got about one more minute before the top of the hour break. Folks, this is illustrative. Jack is illustrating perfectly what happens when you're not paying attention. People are not paying attention right now. I want to make this comparison. Virginia is in the process, the state of Virginia is in the process of proving that Democrats' top priority is to confiscate your guns. Okay, because, and I'm going to have to make my point pretty quick, no Democrats in Virginia, when they ran on gun confiscation. But that was the first damn thing Virginia Democrats tried to do when they obtained that power. Trust me when I tell you, Virginia is going to be the petri dish, the experiment that if it fails, well, we know the leftists will try again. But if they succeed, trust me when I tell you that every other state is going to attempt to duplicate precisely what it is that Virginia did, if they're successful. I'm BZ. That's Jack Alexander. We're going to take a break and be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
This is Shannon Wright of The Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Mike's not here, so I gotta talk fast. You gotta join us. Fall season. Getting ready to start up with a whole bunch of new stuff. News and food and politics and sports and entertainment and a whole bunch of stuff. But wait, Mike's coming. I gotta go. Remember, Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media, Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. Make sure you tune in.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Join me, Jack Alexander, for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the issues affecting the USA. I fearlessly take on the issues that everyone else is too scared to touch. The Jack Alexander Experiment podcast is available wherever good podcasts can be found, like Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast. The Jack Alexander Experiment, because it's not a matter of left versus right, it's a matter of right versus wrong.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
featuring the effervescent contrarian Sackheads Clint, plus the unrestrained bulbosity of BZ, the Sackheads Against Tyranny is a real chat show. Doubling your late-night conservative talk show pleasure with double the hosts, you can listen every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Please note, some contents may have settled during shipping. Member FDIC, batteries not included, warranty voided Montenegro.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. The first hour is done already. OMG, how rapidamento that seemed to have moved. Isodates de Sud de Trot. Anybody remember Isodates? When I was a kid, I used to do that. I'd try to mimic the vampire in Isodates. Isodates de Sud de Trot. So, boy, do we have a great chat room tonight. Look, Zepp's in there, Simone, Mike, Dave, Jack himself, right-wing aviator, the Alaskan Kaiser, and one viewer who is masked. And damn it, I am not going to unmask them, because if they want to come in here and partake of the chat room, we welcome you, one and all. Thanks for being here tonight. We've been talking to Jack Alexander, JackAlexanderExperiment.com. He has his own radio show. Jack lives in Australia. I wanted him here tonight to talk about, and that's what we spent the entire first hour doing, is talking about the firearms cock-up in Australia, and the firearms confiscation of 1996 and also 2003, and the fact that, my God, are you trying to indicate to me, Jack, that there are actual criminals in Australia who refuse to obey laws? You know, if there were criminals in Australia who refuse to obey laws, I'd almost want a producer who would say, huh? But apparently there are criminals in Australia. That comes as a shock, apparently, to some Australian bureaucrats, I guess, in some fashion. Jack.
Yeah, and self-defense is a crime in Australia.
Yes.
They keep saying, proportional use of force is allowed, but the number of times I have seen people charged with that, but even the workplace safety laws go against against you in that. There was a case in Sydney where a guy broke into somebody's house, tripped on the kid's skateboard, fell down the stairs, and broke his arm.
Okay.
Successfully sued the homeowners under the workplace safety laws for not supplying him a safe work environment.
Damn, because, you know, you're a criminal and that's your job. I see it. It's a perfectly logical explanation. That's your job. You're a criminal.
Another one.
Oh, my God.
Another one. Guy breaks into an apartment, rapes a woman who was a hemophiliac back in the 80s, and tragically got some of the tainted blood. It happened in Australia, it happened in the US, it happened in the United Kingdom and a lot of other countries. He came in and injected her with something that knocked her out and raped her for 3 days. She's HIV positive. He gets it. She's now listed, or she's since passed away now, but she was listed as a sex offender for not notifying him that she was HIV positive. She wound up dying penniless because she had to pay for his health care so he could be treated for the infection that he got by raping this girl.
You know, originally tonight I just wanted to talk about firearms, and I wanted to talk in the second hour about wildfires and then get into politics. But, folks, I hope you see that there's a concurrent theme running through all of this. And Jack, as Jack said at the beginning of the show in the first hour, one of the reasons that he wants to move to the United States is because so far, we have a grand bulk of freedoms. And we can look at Australia. Jack has been a perfect illustration stating that tonight, that Australia is hooking hard left. So is New Zealand. Let's not leave out New Zealand, because New Zealand is saying it worked so well in Australia. That's exactly what we want to do here. The push is alive and well in the United States, in Virginia. But the trend here is, and you have to bottom line everything, when you don't have a free country anymore, and as far as I know, America is one of the most, if not the most free at this point today, country on the planet. When you lose the United States, where do you go for freedom? Jack, would that be Australia?
No.
Jack, would that be New Zealand?
Great scenery? No. If you want great scenery, great friendly people, beer that's not as weak as water, Australia's a great place to come. But if you want freedom, move to Texas.
And if I'm not mistaken, you've got a little house on the prairie there yourself.
Yes, I do. If I could only get this immigration thing sorted out.
Yeah, because it's only cost you about, $1.95 to try to get over here? I mean, you haven't spent any money on that or anything, have you?
It has driven me to the point of bankruptcy.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you. I'm laughing with you. Because it's...
So the only option I've got left now is, the way it stands at the moment, is somebody offers me a job and sponsors my immigration, or I win the lottery. That's really the only options I've got left, unless I go to Tijuana, buy a sombrero and a burqa and rock up at the San Ysidro crossing point saying, "Hello, my name is Juan Alejandro Mustafa Mohammed Maria Sanchez Guadalupe. I'm a Mexican Muslim transgender." They're the only three options I got left.
I don't know. That doesn't sound very... You'd have to spend a lot of money on, surgery and whatnot. I don't think it's worth it.
Why? Why? In this age of self-identification, hey,
you can be a tree if you want to.
Yeah, but the silly thing is, the absolute silly thing in this, if the self-identification thing really worked, I should be able to turn up at LAX with my family and say, look, I know my passport says that I was born in Australia, but I self-identify. And if we keep allowing this, maybe the legal precedent will be set where I can turn up at LAX with an Australian passport and say, you have to let me in because I self-identify as an American citizen. If we keep saying, allowing guys into, teenage boys into high school, girls' high school dressing rooms and so on, and competing in women's sports, then why can't that work? Why shouldn't that be allowed? Because I'm a conservative, probably because I served in the military. I believe in the Constitution. I guess that makes me an unworthy person to emigrate to the United States. It really does seem that way. And now they put up the cost of applications for the visas that I've been applying by nearly 300%. It went from just on $500 to just under $1,500 an application for the visas that I had been working on.
Heretic!
And,
heretic!
Hey?
You need to be cast out. You're a heretic. You're a conservative. Yeah. You're a conservative heretic.
And the fact that I'm a second, and it really hasn't helped me being a second lieutenant in the U.S. Air Force Auxiliary Civil Air Patrol either.
That's right.
And
$5 will get you a Starbucks.
Yeah, and I love what I was doing in the Air Patrol. Mentoring the next generation of leaders in the cadets, but also taking part in search and rescue operations. I loved what I was doing there, and that was me giving back to the community I want to call home. You know, I had previously been involved with the Colorado Mounted Rangers when I'd spent time living in Colorado, which was part search and rescue, part law enforcement. Loved every minute of that. Would have loved to have continued doing part-time, doing volunteer level law enforcement. And you and I have had discussions on that in the past.
Yep.
But, Texas, the particular state laws of Texas don't allow for that as much as what it did in Colorado. So I found something else to be passionate about with being involved with the Air Force. And I've loved every minute of it, and I can't wait to get back, to be able to continue doing that and giving back to the community. Because the little town in Texas that I bought a house in has welcomed me with open arms. The people in there are friendly. The schools are relatively good, and it's a quiet little town. It has a few problems. A lot of the drug dealers from Wichita Falls like to come out to Henrietta and do their stuff because, that little county sheriff's department doesn't quite have the manpower to keep an eye on it, as much as Sheriff Lemons has tried to keep a lid on it. So it has its own little unique little problems, but it's a lovely little community. It's a very family-orientated little area, and it still keeps that sense of classic rural America. Go back to that sort of 1970s cliche of of small town American life. And that, the sidewalks still roll up at 5 o'clock every night, except when the high school has a home game. Then they'll wait and roll up at 9:30. That sort of feel to it. If there's a community event, the high school glee club comes out, the cheer squad comes out, the band comes out and celebrates, everything that's great about Texas and, the small city of Henrietta. That's a part of something that is gorgeous to live in.
Wouldn't that be wonderful? We'll never see, rural America, let's admit it. Rural America is something that leftist Democrats and the American media maggots absolutely hate. Since I mentioned the word rural, wildfires have been devastating Australia. And if you listen or watch TV or you read any leftist-oriented magazine, which is just about any newspaper or magazine extant today, with a few exceptions, global warming is responsible for all of those wildfires in Australia. Isn't it, Jack?
No.
No. Come on, be honest.
Yeah, look, yes, there is a drought in much of Australia.
Right.
But Australia has always swung from flooding rains to droughts. I mean, the great Australian poet Banjo Patterson spoke about Australia being this land of droughts and flooding rain. It swings in cycles. But no, the majority of these fires. Are they man-made? Yeah. Is it climate change? No.
It's just like California. I need to. This is interesting. I'd like to take a license to read something that you wrote. Mm-hmm. And this will give insight as to what's going on with Australia. I've got a ton of articles lined up about this tonight in the wildfires. So Jack wrote on Facebook, BZ sent me this interesting link, so I thought I would call the public affairs officers at each of the state emergency response HQs for info about the now more than 200 persons arrested in relation to the fires in Australia. Okay, well, that's good. That's great that there are arrests. My first question is 200? Hang on, we'll get to that. They were happy to tell me about the 80 kids on summer holidays who, out of boredom, decided to spice up their day by lighting a fire or two. They delighted in how quickly they tracked down one of their own, a volunteer firefighter who wanted to be a hero and lit fires in and around his community so he would be called up and deployed. Well, that's happened in the United States as well. As a matter of fact, Joe Wamba wrote a book entirely about that, about a guy in Southern California who was an arson investigator. But Jack continues to write on Facebook. But after citing this article, and I'll go into the article, well, the thrust of the article that I sent to Jack is historytoday.us. ISIS claims escalating use of wildfire arson as a terror tactic. Homeland Security Today. That's from hstoday.us. Homeland Security Today. So Jack writes on Facebook, but after citing that article, I asked about possible links to terrorist groups like ISIS, Jamal Islamiyah, Antifa, or
Jamal Islamiyah.
Islamiyah, okay. Antifa, or a connection to any radical eco groups. The response was very hostile, and that if I didn't stop asking these questions, that my press credentials for this incident would be revoked. Good thing I never applied them. Now, I don't know about you, Jack writes, but if there was nothing to this, you would have thought that they would have been happy to immediately dispel that immediately and not make threats against the press trying to report the truth. That bespeaks volumes to me, Jack. So can you tell us essentially, you saw the article, it mentions ISIS and the involvement of fires, and I sent you the article from, I think it was in fact Homeland Security, and you went in to go confirm or deny that that's what was going on, and so they get pissy with you. So tell us, if you can, what happened.
Well, what happened was they'd make the threats and then they'd hang up, and you would try and call back, and all emergency response centers here, whether you've got your number identification turned on or off, they're going to have access to your number, and then they would refuse to answer calls again from that number. They'd blacklisted that number. I haven't had anyone knocking at the door saying anything about it yet, but they made it very clear that if I was to turn up at one of the press conferences that and ask those questions again, there would be trouble.
Okay, so let's go into the article. This is from hstoday.us. Dave, if you're looking for the source, this is it, hstoday.us. The article is headlined, ISIS claims escalating use of wildfire arson as terror tactic. This is from May 28th of 2019, just last year. Long promoting the use of arson, both of occupied structures and tindered dry wildlands, as a cheap terror tactic that requires very little skill but can inflict immense fear and harm, ISIS claims the terror group is behind a series of wildfires in Iraq and Syria. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a brain surgeon to figure out that ISIS can apply that anywhere in the world. And like I say, I sent Jack a ton of articles. One of them, here's another one that you might be able to use, Dave, for your show. This is from Granite Grok. Granite, just like the rock. Granite Grok, GROK.com. Doesn't have to do specifically with Australia, but it's the same damn thing. World Wildlife Federation paid $70,000 to activists who set fire to the Amazon forest. Now, have you heard this covered by the American media maggots? Of course you haven't. It doesn't fit the narrative. So you got to remember those Amazon forest fires that dominated the news until Hurricane Dorian came in and broke up the second seal of the apocalypse. Okay, so it turns out that the person responsible for at least a few of those fires, well, the 4 men who set the fire are members of an NGO, which is a non-government organization, and they've been arrested for starting fires in protected forests. They started a blaze, then they took photographs of that they sold to the World Wildlife Federation for large sums of cash. This is a quote. After 2 months of investigation, police discovered the involvement of NGOs in the fire, including the Alter de Chao Brigade. Interior Civil Police Chief Jose Humberto Melo Jr. said police had intercepted suspects by telephone and monitored telephone conversations. We started to track the movement of the 4 suspects. We realized their legal entity got a contract with WWF, sold 40 images to World Wildlife Federation for exclusive use for $70,000, and the WWF got donations from actors Leonardo DiCaprio worth $500,000 to assist NGOs to combat burning in the Amazon. Imagine that. So, Jack, just like California, spell it with a K, California always goes through drought cycles, and you're indicating, yes, that Australia goes through cyclic droughts as well, sir?
Yep. And in following up from my original post there, I have since found out that 27 people that have been arrested are involved with some of these radical ecological groups that have been charged with arson. That hasn't come out from the public relations teams. That's actually come out from the eco organizations who are boasting that their people have been arrested in the fight to promote, their cause and so on. Saying that, well, look, the fires wouldn't burn so much if it wasn't for global warming.
Right, or in the case of California, call it with a K, the entire complete lack of forest management. I live at the 4,000-foot level in the Sierra Nevada and have since 1993, and I can tell you there is zero forest management in the state of California. They don't even get funded for that. You know what they have funds for? They have funds for firefighters. Firefighters make bank on that stuff. Fire prevention programs? No. Here's an article from Breitbart. Now, Breitbart apparently is covering this. I don't know if this is covered in Australia. I'm going to ask you that question in a second. But first, this article from Breitbart.com. Report, arson epidemic, not climate change, behind Australia's bushfires. Australian law enforcement has arrested over 180 people for arson in connection with the nation's raging brush fires as alarmists try to pin the blazes on climate change. All of the 183 alleged arsonists have been arrested since the start of Australia's bushfire season, adding that 29 fires were deliberately started in the Shoalhaven region of southwest New South Wales in just 3 months. So the evidence is out there. The information is out there. And wouldn't you say, Jack, that that's a shocking number of arson charges in bushfire-ravaged regions, I should say. And, okay, let me just ask you this. Well, okay, maybe you can answer after the break. We got one more break, so I'm going to break here in a second. But what I'm going to ask Jack when we come back is, what's the real cause? How is Australia reporting on these causes? What's the background and nature of the arsonists? And then more importantly, what's the damn damage to people and to animals that left-wing zealots like World Wildlife Federation and others clearly don't seem to care about at all. I'm BZ. I'm the bloviating Zeppelin. This is the Saloon, BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon. I'm talking to Jack Alexander all night. Thank you ever so kindly for being here. We'll be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
For 50 years, I've seen the American people blinded by corrupt politicians, a lapdog media, and deceptive Islam. The one thing the elites fear is one man with a cane. I'm Dave Milner. Join me through Spreaker, iTunes, and SoundCloud, through SHR Media and the Western Free Radio Network, for half a century of experienced perspective on political and social issues, weekly on The Unpleasant Blind Guy. And catch me on Jeff Mitchell's EDL Radio on blogtalkradio.com. There's
no surrender, ever.
Because truth is not always pleasant.
This is Shannon Wright of The Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Mike's not here, so I gotta talk fast. You gotta join us. Fall season. Getting ready to start up with a whole bunch of new stuff. News and food and politics and sports and entertainment and a whole bunch of stuff. But wait, Mike's coming. I gotta go. Remember, Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media, Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. Make sure you tune in.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America, one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Join me, Jack Alexander, for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the issues affecting the USA. I fearlessly take on the issues that everyone else is too scared to touch. The Jack Alexander Experiment podcast is available wherever good podcasts can be found, like Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast. The Jack Alexander Experiment, because it's not a matter of left versus right, it's a matter of right versus wrong.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Featuring the effervescent contrarian sackheads Clint plus the unrestrained bulbosity of BZ, the Sackheads Against Tyranny is a real chat show. Doubling your late-night conservative talk show pleasure with double the hosts, you can listen every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Please note, some contents may have settled during shipping. Member FDIC, batteries not included, warranty voided Montenegro.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for being here tonight. Thanks to Jack Alexander for being here for the entire 2 hours. I've been trying to enter the chat room, and for whatever reason, this confuser directly in front of me is stymieing me. I'm trying to get into the chat room, into the field, and type, and it either won't let me type or it'll type whatever letter I'm attempting to type, and it'll go, say, for example, M. So the reason I'm not in chat a lot right now is because, for whatever reason, the computer, the keyboard, doesn't like me. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I'll have to look at the battery and see if the battery is going bad. So Jack said in chat, BZ, it's going to be another show that could go on for 2 more hours. Listen, you are absolutely correct, Jack. I could have made this whole show go on for, and number one, I'll tell you, I pretty much guarantee you that we're probably not going to get to more than a political story tonight, if even that. The whole first hour was firearms and what's happening in Australia. We're talking now about the wildfires. I've got a whole bunch of stories about those. And we easily could do 2 hours about firearms and 2 hours just about the wildfire. But what I asked Jack at the beginning of the break was, I want you to talk about the wildfires themselves, the human cost, the animal cost, how wide-ranging they are, and how is the media in Australia covering it as well. So, Jack, can you talk to us just about the depth and breadth and how widespread these fires are?
Okay, the landmass, just to give some people some context, the landmass of Australia is about 1 million square miles larger than the lower 48 in the United States. So you've got a lot, you got all the lower 48 states covered and a good chunk of Canada that in area that makes up what Australia is. Now imagine at least a dozen major fires in all of the states in the lower 48 and about an eighth of Canada.
That's astounding.
There is
that is
much
stunning.
There is that much on fire. If we had as many states as the United States does, and there would be fire in all 48 states.
That's absolutely stunning.
So the entire country is on fire, essentially. The cost to wildlife, again, is going to be massive. The wildlife rescuers have been absolute angels in all of this. There have been some touching media that have come out of wild Australian animals literally going to humans seeking help. There's a picture that was floating around on some of the socials that was posted by one of the Australian media outlets of a kangaroo that walked up and gave a bear hug to a firefighter and wouldn't let go.
Holy crap.
The Irwin family that own Australia Zoo, they have, as far as the wildlife in Queensland is concerned, they are taking in their animal hospital is one of the biggest wildlife hospitals in the country. It is maxed out. They are taking donations from the local community, some of the local community centres have opened up their gymnasiums and so on that have been turned into animal recovery wards. There was another photo that was floating around of a basketball court. I think it was in outside. I think it was Crow's Nest in New South Wales. There is 200 playpens that you would put your toddler into play and so on. 200 of them just with injured koala that are in there being cared for by wildlife rescuers and the community, with that are looking after all of that. It's been massive, but there's also been a downside to it as well. The con men are already out. We've already had a ton of fake charities starting up. But even some of the charities themselves have not acted honorably. And I saw this with the wildfire that destroyed my place back in 2009. A lot of these charities see this as these big events as a major push for donation for their own fundraising and so on. We've also seen county and city councils from the money that's already been donated to allocate that money that's meant to help the people into funding government programs or government beautification programs. I mean, the fires are still burning, and they're already stealing from the government agencies are already stealing from the victims.
Great.
And we saw that back in 2009. The county where I live in Australia, or was living at the time. I'm in a different county now, but all of their public works programs, all of a sudden got budgeted out of the money that was going to come to the county on behalf of donations. It was meant to, repair roads and so on. No, it got turned into beautifying the park out front of the mayor's house or what have you. A lot of that got funneled into pet projects.
Wonderful, because that's what California does. We spent money for, for roads, etc., and the governor Newsom decided that he was going to put them into social services. I found a story on Breitbart. We're talking about animals. This is Breitbart.com. Australian officials, as many as 1 billion animals could be lost in the ongoing brush fires. The images are enough to melt the hardest hearts, just as you mentioned, Jack. Koalas and kangaroos trying to flee the brush fires that have engulfed large portions of Australia. Videos show carcasses of these and other animals that have perished in the blazes littering the scorched landscape. Firefighters from all around the globe are trying to quell the brush fires and save lives. And here's another article. Australia fires. This is again, Dave, for you. Breitbart.com. Australia fires. 20 of 25 deaths, 2,000 homes razed or damaged just in New South Wales. So I don't know if you necessarily, Jack, have your finger on the pulse of what's happened. Just last year, via PG&E murdered 85 people in California, spell it with a K. You have any kind of an idea as to, and all lost in wildfires, mostly in Paradise. Yeah, Paradise.
The numbers have not been as high this time around. The wildfires that I was involved with took a lot of people very quickly. What is catching a lot of people out is the arson. That's going to be a big one. And unlike the last time around, I think the public relations people are holding on to a lot of the numbers, because the last time around there was a lot of flux within the numbers. It caused a lot of confusion. It caused a lot of unnecessary heartache, and I think they're hanging on to the numbers a little bit closer this time to try and prevent a lot of that. And which their hearts might be in the right place, but I think in the long run it's going to turn around and bite them in the ass. But when it comes to the firefighters, on behalf of the Australian people, I want to thank the firefighters of the United States Forestry Service that landed in Australia this last weekend to help fight the fires. It's winter there. These guys, probably fought the PG&E fires, in your area. Yep. Now, they gave up their holidays. They jumped on a plane, and such is the friendship between Australia and the United States, not just militarily, but in this. And we've had guys from our various fire services go over and fight the fires in the United States as well. I'm also going to point out, and this probably hasn't made news in the United States, but it made news here. The pop star Pink donated $500,000 US to the recovery efforts in Australia, as did Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban, although they have a more of a personal stand on it, because
they're
Nicole
Australian.
Kidman and Keith Urban grew up in rural areas that are affected in this. I think a large portion of Nicole Kidman's ancestral home has been lost in the fire. So that's not so much a big thing, but pop star Pink, who has really no familial connection with the country, shelled out $500,000 of her own money to put into it. And look, I'm not a Pink fan, but she has my respect.
I'll tell you what, you bet. God bless her for that. I found some statistics. At least 25 people dead, 2,000 homes destroyed, a multi-billion-dollar hole in the economy by all the brush fires, mostly apparently centered around New South Wales since October, 3 dead in South Australia, 2 in Victoria, arson fires. They've been raging since September, nonstop, I assume. They've scorched an area of, stand by, hope you're sitting down, folks, just like Jack said, 17.3 million acres, an area about 400 times the size of Washington, and it could cost Australia at least $13 billion. 130 fires burn in New South Wales alone. 50 of them are uncontrolled. Entire towns have been engulfed in flames. Residents across several states have lost their homes. The biggest structural damage occurred in New South Wales. That's the most populated state. 1,588 homes destroyed, over 650 damaged. 17.9 million acres have been burned across Australia's 6 states, an area larger than the countries of Belgium and Denmark combined, and the worst affected state is New South Wales, with just in that one state, 12.1 million acres burned. That's staggering.
Yeah, and the majority of the firefighters that are fighting this are all volunteers. Your professional firefighters outside of the city just don't. Even I am. I'm in a fairly residential area. Okay, it's a small rural town, but the fire service in this town is completely voluntary, as is with all of them. You get more than about 5 miles out of the big cities, and they're volunteer firefighters. They're not professional firefighters at all. And I've noticed with the vehicles at our local fire department that they're rotating crews in and out, and usually the station house is not manned, except when an alert goes out and everyone gets a text message and they rock up at the firehouse, get dressed in their firefighting gear, and then deploy. They're keeping people there 24/7 at the moment, which is a rarity. It really only happens when these big fires are going on. But they're going to have to do that while these big fires are not close to where I am at the moment. It hasn't stopped the arsonists from setting fires around this area. And it's only 10 years since the Black Saturday fires where we lost our place. And unfortunately, and I know this from myself, I have not, it's brought back all of my PTSD from that fire while this has been going on. We've woken up to days where you can't walk outside because the smoke is that thick. And that's just smoke that is blown in from New South Wales, which is a 3-hour, the state line is 2.5, 3 hours away from where I am. And if we get a northerly wind, that smoke just comes down. But we've had numerous spot fires in the area here that have been deliberately lit. And it's got the whole community really stressed up at the moment.
That's what I want to find out from you. There's an interesting article that I'm going to refer to in a second about a former Australian Prime Minister. In terms of the cover, well, again, let me make sure I've got things correct. Have these all been going? This is all ongoing since September of last year, and they haven't stopped. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, having said that, and having to endure literally months of wildfires into an entirely new year, how is the press in Australia covering this? To what are people attributing the fires, and are they mentioning the arsonists, or is the bulk of the press in Australia, not international press, I mean local Australia press, to whom or what are they attributing these fires? I'm really curious about that.
They're mostly playing the eco line that because of global warming, we're having more frequent droughts in Australia, although statistically that's been completely bollocksed. That they have not reported on the arson as much as they should be. And that's just they still want to they want to play the global warming line, and then sort of throw in the arson as an also ran. It's global warming's caused the problem, but the arsonists are just trying to make it a little bit more worse, sort of thing.
Okay, in terms of arson, and I don't expect you to know this at all, but I'm just curious if you have any personal thoughts about this. Why so many damn arsonists? Why so many copycats? Are there that many fire bugs in Australia? Has anybody even addressed that at all? Why? I have never in my entire life, and I'm pushing 70, folks, I have never heard of this many. Well, I've heard of serial arsonists, singular. There were a couple in Southern California, but they don't work in packs. Where the hell did Australia come out with 200 arsonists? Isn't anybody asking that question? As in, what the hell is going on with those people?
Well, with a lot of those numbers, they're trying to tame that or walk that number back a little bit. A good portion of that is going to be careless people throwing their cigarette butts out of the vehicle while they're driving down the interstate and what have you. And a good number of the people that have been charged have been, that is what they've done. Some other people have had illegal fires and so on going. They've been included in that number. But this time of year is always bad for fires. It's summer holidays here. Kids wanting to misbehave, or they're sneaking out to have a cigarette.
Okay.
And in a lot of cases with the kids that have been charged in this, they sort of cross over between two demographics in this. They didn't go out to deliberately light a fire. They snuck out of it's school holidays. They're bored. They got together there with their mates. They managed to get a hold of, steal a packet of their parents' cigarettes, something, and they're going out into the scrubland to smoke them. And they're being careless. That's been, about 80 arrests for that happening of juveniles. There's been a large number of people that have been done, for the same thing, smoking related litter and so on. I think that's about half the numbers of it. But, then we get into the deliberate stuff. Now, as I said, we know that there's about 27 people that have been charged for deliberately starting fires who have connections with radical ecological groups, because the groups have come out and claimed responsibility. The media here is not covering that. They just refuse to cover that whatsoever. But I've noticed with a lot of this arson as well that some of the rural communities that have had a certain ethnic group from Middle Eastern areas thrust upon them in the name of tolerance and housing refugees.
Right.
There seems to be a lot more arson cropping up in those rural areas.
Oh.
And we're talking about the breadbasket of Australia. The major farming areas. Now, in a lot of the areas in New South Wales that were the first to go up in September, a lot of that winter harvest wheat, or the winter wheat that was grown through the winter months, was just drying out, ready to be harvested when those fires struck.
Okay, I want to interrupt you just for a second. Jack, you may not be able to see this. I'm sure you've seen it in the media before. But for everybody who's not just listening to the show, but you're actually watching, and it's running on Periscope right now, and it's also running on YouTube and Facebook. Let me see if I can get this closer. This is a photograph that Dave provided that shows Australia from satellite. It's in focus now. Look how much of that continent is ablaze. You can literally see the fires in that photograph. That's Australia right now. When you said, Jack, that it was shocking, until I saw that photograph, because, a picture's worth a million words, I had no idea of the extent of that. I'm going to have to kind of wrap it up with this article. This is again from Breitbart.com. You mentioned it already, Jack Alexander. From Breitbart.com, the headline is Former Australian Prime Minister, Climate Cult is effectively a new religion. Well, I've said that. I call them the religious left because all it requires is faith. Tony Abbott, a former PM, told Israeli public radio many politicians appear to be in the grip of climate cult. They're pursuing policies that are going to lead to third world style blackouts in the West. Imagine that, because that crap is already happening here in California, and it's going to get worse this summer. Has anybody, Jack Alexander, or maybe it's just way too damn early, has anybody in Australia, Jack, said anything remotely similar to, well, we might have a handle on some of this by fill in the blank?
No. Maybe it's too early on so many of these. And while somebody might have said it, but with the number of because we are so close to a lot of this, we've got the apps on our phones that notify us when there's fire in the areas, and when they strike in these areas, there's just so many alerts. We just can't keep up with them. So I'm not even sure they're even trying to say this one's contained or that one's contained, because as history has shown, especially with these coordinated arson attacks, as soon as they think they've got a beat on it, some asshole will be walking around with cotton bud soaked in paraffin wax and a cigarette lighter, and he'll start them up all over again.
So essentially what you're saying, how incredibly depressing is this? This won't stop until you run out of fuel.
Or we get some good rain.
Absolutely incredible. Folks, we've been talking to Jack Alexander for the entire show. Jack, thank you ever so kindly for being here for the entire 2 hours. 2 full hours here tonight. You can find him at jackalexanderexperiment.com, all one word. jackalexanderexperiment.com, all one word. Jack, finally, before I go away for the week, you haven't had your show, had you? Have you?
No. But given my birthday is on Monday, I thought I'd give the listeners a present and come back on Monday.
Okay. Tell folks why.
Mostly because with the fires that are in the area, with a couple of the major fires which have since been contained between me and Melbourne. And they disrupted the fibre connection between there, and we've been the internet's been a mess between that, rolling blackouts and so on. It's been awkward. It would not have been a good image to start a radio show only to have it die midway through.
Yeah, not like I've had that happen or anything.
Mm.
Yeah, thanks, Comcast. Really appreciate it, bastards. In any event, Alaskan in chat said, pray for a typhoon. Okay, except especially in California, after fires and all the land has been cleared, particularly because we have mountains and hills and whatnot, if you have a typhoon or a series of rain that comes in, you always then, at least in California, spell it with a K, we have mudslides.
Mudslides, yep.
So this is a never-ending piece of crap, the bulk of which is man-made, but not in the way that the climate alarmists and the religious left are saying. Jack, thank you so kindly for being here tonight. I greatly appreciate it.
You're welcome.
If you're coming back on Monday, let everybody know on social media. You're on Twitter at what? What's your Twitter handle?
At Experiment Jack. It's the same at Instagram as well.
Okay. So, folks, watch social media for Jack at Experiment Jack on Twitter. He's on Facebook. You got 2 Facebook pages, I think. You've got Jack Alexander, your personal, and then you've got Jack Alexander.
Jack Alexander Experiment as well.
Experiment, okay. So check the social media for Jack to see if he's going to be back on Monday, and then watch his show. He's on Monday through Friday, 2 damn hours. You're a better man than I, Gunga Din. I have a hell of a time trying to get guests in for 2 2-hour shows a week, and then, Wednesday if Clint decides to show up for 2 hours, which, anyway, that's a story for another time. Jack, thank you for being here tonight, sir.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Actually, can I beg for something?
What?
Before we get at it.
Okay.
Look, as we pointed, as we've spoken about my immigration problems in the past, and admittedly, I'm springing this on BZ at last notice, so we might have words afterwards. But look, if somebody would like to offer me a job and help sponsor my immigration, I got a background in broadcasting. I've got my military background. Shit, I've even got a license to drive a forklift. If someone has a position that could help sponsor my family and I, it would be appreciated if they could contact me through either through BZ or through Facebook. That would be appreciated, and we could talk, because it's not safe for us staying here anymore.
On any number of levels.
Yeah.
Now. Completely understood. Jack, thanks for being here, and I didn't take umbrage to that.
You're welcome.
If folks, if you got something for Jack, contact him on social media. Super dude. And thanks again for being here tonight, sir.
You're welcome.
With that, I guess I got to do this.
Monsieur has been locked!
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, thanks for listening to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, live and direct right here on the SHR Media Network. If you want to contact me, you can find me on Twitter at BZEP, at BZEP, and on my blog at bloviatingzeppelin.net. Promotional consideration is by the Lockheed Martin Skunk Works and also by Pratt & Whitney Engines. Thrust. You can trust. Tiaras are by My Little Pony. Thanks to my personal KC-135 Kettle One refueling team with whom I shall be consorting in less than an hour. Thanks to Jack Alexander for being here for 2 hours. Thanks to everybody in chat. Thanks to everybody for listening live. Thanks to everybody who listens in podcast later on. To the American trucker who keeps America moving. I appreciate each and every one of you folks for taking the time out of your busy day, or, well, in my case, night, to do so. Next Tuesday, I got a guy running for Congress. Tuesday night. You need to come back. U.S. Congress. God bless, take care, and be safe, folks.
Everybody quiet down now and get some sleep.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Ben.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Mama. Good night, Daddy.
Good night, children.
Good night, Daddy. Good night, Elizabeth.
Good night, John Boy. Good night, Jim Bob. Good night, Jim Bob.
Good night, Jim Bob.
What's going on? I was asleep. What's everybody doing?
Good night,
Jim Bob.
Good night, and good luck.